There is no doubt that she is one of the most hated players in Season 2, but could there be more to her character than what appears on the surface? She is definitely annoying as hell, and has said some wild things. However, I do think the writers often hide these types of Easter eggs in shows, even if the character in question seems crazy. The Shaman has been foreshadowing the fates of the players throughout Season 2, which has definitely been overlooked in her character development. I find the Shaman to be a complete enigma. While she does seem crazy, especially during that moment in the six-legged race when she completely collapsed and froze, she still delivers some incredibly accurate prophecies. In today's video, we will discuss all of the prophecies she made and the meanings behind them. I do believe some of these prophecies will come true, partly because I think they serve as narrative devices, and also because they would be pointless additions to the plot if they didn't. This is all just a theory based on hints from Season 2. The writers have been building up her character way too much for it to be just a simple storyline. The first interaction with this character is with Gi-hun when he wakes up in the dorm. Although it's very easy to miss at first, there is actually a very subtle detail here that suggests her prophecies might come true. She directly tells Gi-hun, "I see the wandering souls trapped with you, unable to rest in death. You didn't come here of your own volition. Those vengeful souls dragged you here. Your fate is decided." That's the kind of strange statement that leaves a room for speculation. We know that everything she says is true. Gi-hun is indeed haunted by the dead players from the first season, carrying them with him in his soul. The survivor's guilt he feels is a heavy burden. Remember how depressed he was at the end of Season 1 when he didn't even touch the money? The only thing keeping him moving forward is his desire for revenge, but maybe that desire isn't truly his own. Perhaps it belongs to the dead players whose spirits Gi-hun carries with him. Once Gi-hun ends the game, will whatever is possessing him disappear? Will he suddenly revert to his original personality, or could he just collapse and die, either from something that should have killed him long ago or for no apparent reason at all? There are already a lot of theories suggesting that Gi-hun might sacrifice himself to stop the games, and many of them seem very plausible. Also, in the same dialogue, player 044 told Gi-hun, "If we get out of here, let me perform a ritual." If we get out. This was before they played any games, so this sentence carried more weight than people realize. I don't think the writers included that line randomly. Remember that at the beginning of the first game, everybody thought Gi-hun was crazy, even Young Bai. People tend to disregard characters they dislike, and even though I hate her more than player 100, I don't think her words are meaningless. She stared eerily at player 0952 rounds before her death. The second major prophecy happened during the first mingle round. Out of 9 other people in the room, she spoke only to Junhee, and right after that, she turned to Gi-hun, telling him, "You've lived longer than you were meant to. You're here for a reason. You were drawn by destiny." If you're a fan of my channel, you know my opinion about Gi-hun and how he won Squid Game purely by luck. This prophecy seems to reaffirm that, suggesting that Gi-hun only survived because he has a bigger purpose to fulfill. This prophecy wasn't just randomly added here. We've already seen how much the main characters care for Junhee and her baby. I believe these words will have a bigger impact in the final season, where it's possible that Gi-hun's fate is tied to Junhee's baby and that he might sacrifice himself for her. I also think this would be excellent symbolism. A baby being born from those deadly games. A life that conquers death, symbolizing the end of the Squid Games. Besides the Shaman, the only other characters who figured out that player 222 is pregnant were the old lady who had helped many women give birth, and possibly Namgyu. This is why the prophecy and the realization that Junhee is pregnant hold more relevance than people think. Remember how surprised Junhee was when Geomja knew she was pregnant, and when she wanted to join Gi-hun's team during the six-legged race, she specifically needed to tell them she was pregnant. This is why I believe this prophecy is a direct link to the end of the season. Next, we have another prophecy during the voting scene, when Gi-hoon tried to save the players' lives by persuading them to vote to leave. She told him it was meaningless. Just as you didn't get to choose when you entered this world, you don't get to pick when you're going to leave it. The time and place of each one of your deaths were decided from the instant you were born. No matter how hard you try to fight it, you'll never be able to escape your fate. This suggests that no matter how hard you try, you cannot escape your fate. In fact, the actions you take to avoid it might be the very actions that lead you directly to it. There is a parable I like very much called The Appointment in Samara. In short, a rich man in Baghdad once saw death in the marketplace. Seeing death's shocked face, he knew she had come for him. In a panic, he rented a horse and rode to Samara, hoping to evade his fate and live longer. But when he arrived in Samara, he encountered death once again. Confused, he asked her, "Why did you look so shocked when you saw me in Baghdad earlier?" Death replied, "I was surprised when I saw you in Baghdad, because I have an appointment with you tonight in Samara." I think this parable perfectly illustrates Ji-hoon's actions in Squid Game. As much as he wants to stop the killing, he is in fact the one who causes the players' deaths. If he hadn't joined the games, there wouldn't have been any rebellion plan. Without the rebellion plan, the players who joined his cause might have survived. Also, if it weren't for him pushing so hard for people to leave the game, there wouldn't have been such a strong divide between those who voted to leave and those who voted to stay. Perhaps his actions were exactly what triggered the special game for this season. If the O's were the majority, then they wouldn't have had any reason to attack the X's during the night. We don't truly decide what we do. Rather, our surroundings shape who we are. There is no free will. In this case, Gi-hoon's actions had no real influence on how things turned out, because they were always destined to happen that way. Perhaps Gi-hoon's participation in the game was necessary for all those players to die. In the end, you are always bound to become what you are destined to be. The third major prophecy came after the mingle, when she told Hyunju Group she had been praying to watch them all die. Then she looked directly at 007 and 149 and seemed to prophesy that they would die together, staring into each other's eyes. I also believe there is no way for the mother and son duo to survive these deadly competitions, and the main reason is that Hwang Dong-hyuk loves to make us suffer. There's no way he would pass up the opportunity to break our hearts again, just like he did with Ali's death. The writers deliberately built up these two characters to make us grow fond of them, only to kill them off later in the show. We also know from the actors that their filming schedule ended 6 months before everyone else's, so it's not looking good for the mother and son. The shaman also told Hyunju, "Don't cry, you will be joining young me in the afterlife soon." And as much as I hate to admit it, deep down I know this will probably come true as well. Hyunju and Geumja are the most beloved characters of this season, and the director has already told us that very few characters will survive at the end. He even said that this finale would be the craziest in TV history. So yeah, even if I end up crying my heart out, I fully expect all my favorite characters to die in the last season. Now, moving on to the last point of this video, and the reason why almost every viewer dismisses the shaman's prophecies, her breakdown during the six-legged race. In that scene, she froze and said that her god had abandoned her. We've had these mysterious moments from her, only to be shown this scene, which completely contradicts her initial character. This could imply that she's actually a charlatan and that all her talk is nonsense. But I believe this scene is also a prophecy that will later come true. We've seen that she has slowly started to gather a cult-like following, with people beginning to trust her, like that woman who switched from an X to an O. I think people will start trusting her and following her advice, which will protect her in the games. She will begin to clash with others or lure them into playing more games, claiming it's fate and that they will survive. Her misleading guidance from God will force the other teams to continue with the games. This will turn into more of a cult and highlight the greed and desperation of humanity, continuing the theme of the last two seasons. The the focus will shift away from just the deadly games to emphasize the deeper message of human nature. I think we might see another game similar to the Glass Bridge, where the Shaman lady and her followers would pick the first numbers. When the game is revealed, she would realize that she's destined to die, and that, in fact, the gods have abandoned her. All that said, I do kind of like what she says about how things are, just not about how things will be. I like the implication that Gi-hun is pretty much possessed by the former players. I like that idea exactly as it is, because you could choose to interpret it supernaturally, like how his personality has completely changed, and he is literally possessed by other souls seeking vengeance. On the other hand, you could also interpret it as him intentionally copying Song-woo's personality and trying to erase himself as a completely non-supernatural defense mechanism. In that case, the shaman might just be using basic psychology to pick up on his severe issues and spinning it into something mystical that she usually sells. So what do you think about the shaman lady's prophecy? I know you hate the character, but do you think there might be some truth behind her words? Let me know in the comments what you think, and thank you for watching.